and I'm here tonight to talk about some exciting Linux news that's been coming out. I heard recently that, or was reading recently, that the Danish government is getting rid of Microsoft and switching over to Linux and LibreOffice instead of Office 365. And also one of the world's largest creators, PewDiePie, has been encouraging his 10 million YouTube followers to basically install Linux and break out of vendor lock-in. All the things that we at Cloud Underground have been talking about forever now. So yeah, excited to talk about a few things tonight for a quick little stream. And thanks for joining me. Yeah, I was actually saw this on LinkedIn and then went and found an article about it. Hold on, let me change my setup here so you can see what I'm looking at. Yeah, I found this very interesting, that the Danish government is, the Danish Ministry of Digital Affairs are switching over their the Danish Ministry of Digitization, Digital Affairs, something like that. They're completely abandoning Microsoft, it says. They have reported essentially that they're going to be migrating most of their staff over to Linux in the next few months. Actually, it's a pretty ambitious plan to migrate their whole office. I don't know how big of an office it is. Who knows? Who knows how big it is? But I love the thought of all these little Danish office workers just switching over to Linux. One of the critiques that I've heard of this is that, like, oh, it's going to be such a learning curve, and how will people be able to make this change so quickly, and will they be able to have compatibility between, their new tools? I'm sure that maybe there's some considerations there to think about, but for the most part, I think most things are pretty compatible. And also, I think most people are pretty good at like office software at this stage. I've used LibreOffice quite a bit. I don't think it's like that big of a learning curve. Like, if you've used Microsoft Office, then you can probably use like just about any office software out there. So I think that doesn't give enough credit to the lovely government workers in Denmark who are going to be using Linux. The other cool thing about Linux is, it doesn't actually look or feel all that different from like Windows operating system. It's just another operating system. It's still got, all of the UI features that you would think of, and it's a lot lighter weight. Like, that's why, like I'll talk about in a minute, other creators are kind of switching over. And yeah, it's very user-friendly. It's a lot more user-friendly than I think people give it credit for. So yeah, I think it's cool. I think it's very good news, and not surprising, honestly. I feel like with the current state of things in the United States, people knowing that you can't necessarily trust intelligence in the U.S. anymore, it's not surprising that some countries in Europe and abroad elsewhere are switching over to non-U.S. based companies, and also just switching over from the vendor lock-in. I think people are worried that a company like Microsoft could just suddenly decide to, kind of ransom all of your data and all of your infrastructure, which they certainly would have the capabilities to do so if they ever wanted to, because so many people rely on them so heavily. Honestly, I don't really know what that would mean for things like, single sign-on or like Active Directory, things like that. That's obviously not my area of expertise, but I think it's pretty cool that they are moving away from vendor lock-in into open source solutions. Yes, like I said, that's something we at Cloud Underground have been encouraging people to do for a very long time, and have been helping people do also, is migrate their stack to more ownership of their of their own assets. There's plenty of tools out there that you can use that don't lock you into insane vendor contracts, and that give you a lot more flexibility, and that again also allow you to own your infrastructure. That's what we do at Cloud Underground with the Underground Nexus. And yeah. Anyway, another cool story. This is actually something I just found in my personal life because I watch YouTube, and I do follow PewDiePie. I have been a fan of PewDiePie. I feel like of the 2010 YouTube creators that are still on the platform haven't done crazy things. I really like his new content since he's moved to Japan. he's, I think he was one of those people who was like, I had a little controversy and I never want to touch that again. And I'm just going to do the things I like to do that people don't get mad about. And I just, I think that's great for him. And, yeah, besides that, he's made some really cool videos in the last couple months about Linux and how he has switched over to using Linux. Pretty funny video. I definitely encourage people to go check that out if you are a fan, or if you are a fan of Linux. It's actually a pretty good video, or if you're interested in switching over. He talks a lot about his reasoning, things like, Microsoft sometimes really encourages you to use some of their tools, which maybe you don't want to use. And there's a lot of bloat. Bloatware is a thing on just about any operating system, but you get a lot less of that if you do Linux, usually. Depending on your distro, of course. I'm sure some have more tools than others. Of course, even our Underground Nexus various installs have various different tools depending on what Underground Nexus you're using. So, but you can find a nice lightweight version that's like very vanilla that you can customize completely and add whatever you want to. And he also talked about switching over from using like Adobe to open source tools. That's another thing we do in the Nexus Creator Vault, is we have a full, creator suite essentially, with editing software, Kdenlive, OBS Studio, so you can, stream or edit video, those sorts of things. There's also some really great, kind of Photoshop replacements like GIMP, which is an image editor tool, and Inkscape, which essentially replaces like Adobe Illustrator, I think, something like that. So there's definitely some good tools out there, and we have them in the Nexus Creator Vault because those are the kinds of tools that we use to do most of our production. They're all open source. You're not dependent on someone else's cloud. You can, at least on the Adobe cloud for like saving your work or whatever, you can manage where your work is saved. If you want to put it in your own cloud, or like build your own cloud, or put it in a public cloud, or however you want to do it, you can manage all of those things yourself, or just have it stored on your, natively with some backups. I always encourage backups. But yeah, it's funny. It's cool. I'm like super excited. And then he made this other video. I don't know that I've watched this one totally. I don't think I watched this one, but he talks about creating he made his own Tamagotchi, I think, essentially, which I think is a pretty cool idea. So I'm gonna have to go back and check that one out. But I love that. I love that PewDiePie's been making some cool content on Linux. It's been, again, something we've been talking about. Oh, and I think he uses actually a Raspberry Pi in this video. So I really need to watch this. I watched part of it. I need to watch it again. But I love that because, of course, that was how we started, essentially, not with Cloud Underground, but with one of our previous businesses, was essentially making little custom Raspberry Pi computers. And so and that was one of the things that we loved about Raspberry Pis, is you can do so many different things with them, because again, they're just Linux based, and you can customize it in so many different ways. You can have a UI if you want to. You can turn it into a Tamagotchi if you want to. You can have a Pi hole that blocks ads on your network. You can turn it into like a home assistant. You can, have a whole data center. You can turn it into a server. We have, we've done that in the past as well. So there's so many cool things that you can do with Linux, with Raspberry Pis, by breaking away from, vendor constraints. And I love that. I'm all about customization myself. So anytime I see somebody, especially like a large creator, doing those sorts of things and kind of realizing or talking about their frustrations with some of these, major companies, I think that we all experience, but don't necessarily all talk about. I think we all just kind of feel like, oh, this is just normal everyday life, that it wants me to switch my browser to the one it wants me to use every 5 minutes, or, those sorts of things. Or again, the software bloat, you open up your start menu and there's a bunch of apps that you've never used and will never use and you didn't install. They're just there. So, of course, you can go through and manually uninstall a lot of them. Some of them they won't even let you, but some of them you can. But again, you just don't have these same issues with other Linux-based operating systems. So The other reason I'm kind of talking about this is because, especially like the PewDiePie content has been kind of inspiring me myself to finally make the switch over to change, or I've been meaning to do some updates on my own desktop, and I think I'm just gonna like make it a Underground Nexus OS Linux based computer and just totally get rid of what it's currently running and make it all Linux based and just play around with that. And so I might be making some content around that probably in July. I don't know that I'm gonna have much time before then to dive into a big undertaking like that, where I'm taking my whole computer offline and working through some fun troubleshooting and stuff. But yeah, I'm super excited to kind of delve into that. It might not be that big of a deal. I don't know. I need to do some research. If anybody knows anything about switching into a fully Linux-based operating system from, your current setup, talk to me. I'm sure my spouse knows a lot about this as well, so I'll definitely be talking to him. Shout out Nate O'Reilly. And yeah, I think I'm excited. It should be good. Love it. All right. I think the last thing I wanted to say is, of course, if you yourself want to learn more about Linux, want to build your own Linux machine, then you should definitely check out CloudJam and the Underground Nexus. Build your first Underground Nexus with CloudJam. You can do it for free today if you use code JAMON2025 at checkout. And we'll show you how to build your own Underground Nexus Linux desktop, Linux-based desktop environment where you can do so many things, and we'll talk you through some of those things in CloudJam. Pretty exciting stuff. And you can do, again, just about anything. It's fun. If you want to have, again, build a lab, build a home lab, build, something for yourself, something for your business. You can do it with Underground Nexus. And we encourage you to check out CloudJam and learn more. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. I'm going to try and do some streams at some like normal people hours in the near future. But thanks everyone for watching or catching the replay, and talk to you all soon.